This is Josh White with JW Math Tutoring, and today's video is going to focus on the October 2022 QAS SAT Math Section 3, the No Calculator section that was just administered a couple of weeks ago. Now, please do keep in mind that on the explanation videos that I make, I like to go through as many possible solution methods as possible. So therefore, my videos may be a little bit longer than other videos that you would find out there, and may exceed, the time limits for the given sections of each test. Also, be on the lookout for the calculator section solutions, which will be posted in a couple days as well. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get right to it.
But life is a dream the calculus could never predict.
Okay, just before we get started on this October 2022 SAT Math No Calculator section, just a quick reminder, if you like this video and my other videos, please do click the thumbs up on them, and also subscribe to my channel and sign up for notifications as well. Alright, so this first question, question number 1 here, you're basically given a graph of a line, and they want to know what's the predicted weight for a foot length of 9 centimeters. Our foot length is just our x coordinate or x value, and so it'd be like right here between 8 and 10. We go up on the graph, we see it looks like it's going to be somewhere between 6 and 8. So the correct answer for this one is just going to be letter B, 7, and that's it. No other work is needed. Moving on to the next question, number 2. This one is basically a geometry question, and it can be a little confusing with all the letters, but if you draw a picture of the situation, it is much easier to see what's going on. So we'll draw a line segment AC. Okay, this whole thing is 120 in its length. Now we have point B somewhere in the middle. It doesn't matter where you put it. And now we know AB is 5x plus 20, and we know BC is 6x minus 10. So now you can hopefully see that adding these two expressions together is going to equal the 120 for the entire line segment. So the correct answer is going to be letter D, 5x plus 20 plus 6x minus 10 equals 120. Moving on to question number 3. So here you have a system of equations, but one of them actually is solved for one of the variables, for x. So therefore, this is actually not a difficult problem at all. So you just take our x value, plug it in for x in the second equation, and that just gives us 4 over 4 plus 2, or 1 plus 2, which is just 3. Therefore, the solution is just going to be 4 comma 3. Correct answer for this problem is going to be letter B. Moving on now to question number 4. Here you're given a function and you're asked to identify the graph of it. But notice this is just a linear function in slope-intercept form with a slope of positive 2 and a y-intercept of 6. So when you look at all these graphs, these answer choices, notice B, C, and D all have negative slopes. So therefore, they cannot be the correct answer. The only possible correct answer will be letter A. And it also has a y-intercept value of 6, which matches what we're given in the problem. Moving on now to question 5. Here you are given the graph of a quadratic function, or a parabola, and you want to know which of the following answer choices could be the graph of the basically f of x and then plus 2, with the 2 outside the parentheses. So this 2 outside the parentheses means it's going to be a vertical shift of up 2 units. Therefore, when we look at the possible answer choices, A is going to be the only one that makes sense. If you look at B, this looks like it is a shift to the left of, possibly 2 units, or possibly some other number. If you look at C compared to the original, notice first of all it flipped upside down, and second of all, it looks like it's shifted left and up if you compare the vertex of the original to the vertex of this. And then D looks like it's shifted to the left probably more than 2 units, but again, we don't know exactly. So the correct answer is going to be letter A. And one other thing just to mention, if the plus 2 happened to be in the parentheses, this is just like basically extra work on transformations, just to review, this would actually correspond to a horizontal shift, meaning left or right, and specifically the plus 2 would mean that it's shifted to the left 2 units, because inside the parentheses it's actually the opposite of what you see. In order to have it shifted to the right 2 units, you would have to have f of parentheses x minus 2. So that's just a brief little review of horizontal shifts versus vertical shifts. All right, next question is number 6. Here they give us a function and they want to evaluate it for 6. So we're just going to plug in 6 for x. And now here you have to know that negative 1 to the 6th power is just going to equal 1. It's a negative number to an even power, so that tells us it's going to be positive, and then, the 1 to the 6th is just 1. So 5 times 1 is just 5. Correct answer for this question is just going to be letter C, 5. Now, moving on to number 7, there are actually multiple ways, I guess, that you could approach this problem. So one way you could notice, way you could solve it, is to notice that the x minus 4s technically can be canceled out, and then you're just left with x plus 2 equals 0. Subtract 2 on both sides, x equals negative 2, and that's your answer. Now, you could also try to approach it by simply multiplying both sides times x minus 4. On the right side, you would still get 0. On the left side, you would then have x minus 4 times x plus 2, and then you would technically solve each of these, and you would get x equals negative 2 and x equals 4. But the problem is the 4 is not an acceptable solution because it is not in the domain. If you plug in 4 to this equation, you get 0 over 0, which is not defined or does not exist. So 4 is not an acceptable solution to this. And then finally, a third way you could actually solve this is you could go ahead and you could plug in the answer choices, meaning start with 4 and then 2 and 0 and negative 2 to see which one gives you 0 on the left side. But again, you do have to know that 0 over 0 is not equal to 0. Okay, so A is not going to work. So that's back solving, just plugging in the answers to see which one would make the equation true. All right, the next question, we have another quadratic function here, and we have its graph, and we want to know its equation. So notice all of these equations are in vertex form, which is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Now, all we have to do then is identify the vertex, and that should lead us to the answer. So the vertex is going to be our maximum point, right here in the middle. It's going to have an x value of 6, so h is going to equal 6. It's going to have a y value of 4, so k is going to equal 4. So you plug those in, you get x minus 6 squared plus 4. Notice a is going to be a negative value. We don't know exactly what it is, so I'll just put a negative sign out front here. It could be negative 1, it could be something else, but when you look at the answer choices, there's only one answer choice that matches with the correct h and k values, and it's answer choice C. The others all have incorrect h and or k values, so they're wrong, and the correct answer for this one, again, will be letter C. Next question, number 9, deals with a little geometry, specifically similar triangles. So I'm just going to draw the two triangles first. Actually, let me draw a better picture of it since it is a little bit angled. So here's ADE, and then if I draw ABC, okay, when you have two similar triangles, the corresponding angles are going to be congruent. So that means if this angle up here is some measure, then whatever it is going to be the same for this yellow angle as well. And then similarly, these two angles would have the same measurement, and A, of course, would be the same because it's shared among both of them. So they tell us ABC right here is 60 degrees. So that means ADE right here has to be 60 degrees as well. So the correct answer to this one is just going to be letter D, 60 degrees, and that's it, no other work. Next up, we have question number 10. So on this question, you are given the graph of a linear function or a line, and you're asked to identify its equation. Now, a couple things. First, I'm going to zoom in here so it's a little bit larger. And A is our x variable, P is our y variable. A is, represents area, P represents number of flowering plant species. So notice it goes through 0, 0. So it's like if we're looking to find the slope of this line, we already have one point to use. You think about y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 for our slope formula. So we already have one point, which is just 0, 0. Now, for the other point, so normally what you want to do is you want to look for points where you have the values right on like the grid marks. Like there's one right here at 40, 15,000, or there's one up here at 80, 30,000. However, I'm going to choose a different point, and I will explain why. I'm going to choose the point, I'm going to choose 100, and then this y value up here is like maybe 37,000, or maybe it's 38,000, whatever. I'll go with 38,000. Doesn't matter. We're just estimating. So notice when you plug that in, because our other point is 0, 0, technically we don't even need it. In other words, we can just get rid of like this, and really our slope is just going to be, our 38,000, our y value, over 100. So now, notice how easy it is to reduce it. Cross out 2 zeros on the bottom, cross out 2 zeros on the top. So the slope is going to be something like approximately equal to 380. So when we look down at all the answer choices, oh, it's answer choice B right here. 375, very close to 380. That means at this point is probably at 37,500 instead of 38,000. The reason I chose that point with the 100 is because if you chose 40 and 15,000, then you end up with 15,000 over 40. And yes, you could cross out 1 0, and then you have 1,500 over 4. Like, it might not be obvious to a lot of people what this reduces to, and you might have to do the long division to figure it out. Whereas with the other one, because it was 100, I could just cross out all the zeros, and then the number I'm left with on the top is my slope, and that's my answer. Now, you could also obviously look at this and you could think, okay, 4 times 400 would be like 1600. 1600 is close to 1500. Okay, 400 is close to 375, and that's the answer. But that's why I chose the 100 for my x coordinate point. You could also have chosen 10 too, and you could have said that 10 is equal to like 3500 or whatever. Um, halfway between basically like 0 and 5,000 here. Actually, no, it'd be a little more than halfway, excuse me. Be closer to 5,000 compared to the 0 line. But the 100 is really the point that I would prefer to choose. All right, now moving on to the next question, number 11. So in this question, there are multiple ways that you could solve it. So the first method I would do, which is what I consider a traditional way, is just to isolate n. So I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. I get p minus 3 equals 2 over n. Then I'm going to multiply by n. And then for my last step, I'm going to divide by p minus 3. So I get n equals 2 divided by p minus 3. Notice here I did not distribute the n when I multiplied by it on the left. And the reason I don't want to do that is because n is what I want to solve for. So I want to keep that completely isolated from the p minus 3. So the correct answer is going to be letter C right here, 2 over p minus 3. Now, an alternate method to solve this is by using picking numbers. So I'm going to let n equal 1, and notice it have to meet the conditions in the problem. So for example, it tells us in the problem n is not equal to 0, so okay, that checks. And p has to be greater than 3. So if n is 1, then that means p is 2 divided by 1 plus 3, which equals 5. Okay, that meets the conditions of the problem, so I'm good. Now we plug in all these values and we see what we get. For A, we've got 1 equals 5 divided by 2 minus 3. Okay, that's like 2.5 minus 3. Is that equal to 1? No. Move on. Okay, B is going to be the same thing, except it's going to be 5 over 2 plus 3, so it's 2.5 plus 3. Okay, that's not 1. Wrong. C is going to be 1 equals 2 over 5 minus 3. 2 over 2, that is 1. That's correct. D is going to be 1 equals negative 2 over 5 plus 3. Is 1 equal to negative 2/8 or negative 1/4? No, it's wrong. So that's an alternate method you could use. Pick a number for n, plug that in, get the corresponding value for p, and then plug those values into your answer choices and see which equation is true. And the reason I am able to identify to use picking numbers here is because the answer choices are formulas. That is one clue or one hint to know when you can use picking numbers. All right, next up, question number 12, we have a system of linear equations, and we're told it has no solution, so what does p have to equal? There's two different ways you could think about this one. So the first way that I would say is to notice that when you have no solution for a system of linear equations, the two lines will have the same slope but different y-intercepts. So here we do have different y-intercepts, so that part checks, but the slopes have to be the same. Slope on the top line is 3. That means p also has to equal 3. So the correct answer for this one is going to be letter D. Now, an alternate way to think about this is the method that I use I recommend when you have systems of equations, but they're given in standard form, okay, when x and y are on the same side of the equal sign. So when it's no solution, the multipliers on x and y are the same, but they're different for the number. Okay, so here, technically the multiplier to go from y to y is just 1. In other words, just times positive 1. So to go from 3 times 1, that's just good. That means that p has to equal 3 because x and y have to have the same multiplier. So 3 times 1 would just be 3. So that's a second way you could think of this and get the same correct answer. Next question deals with multiplying some expressions with radicals. It's number 13. So when we first distribute root x times root x, we get root x squared, but that just simplifies to x because the square root and the squared basically cancel out. Then we're going to multiply root x times root y. Now that's just going to become root xy. They just join together under the same radical, but they cannot be simplified because there's only one of each inside the radical, and this is a square root, meaning you have to have pairs of either variables or numbers in order to come outside. So the correct answer for this problem is just going to be letter A. For number 14, this one is basically an exponential decay type situation. So there's two different ways you could do it. The first way I would do it is, say he starts with 200 words, okay, and he remembers 10% fewer. So that means we need to subtract, 10% of our starting value. Well, 10% of 200 is just 20. Move the decimal over one spot. So if you take away 20 words, he now remembers 180. That's after day number 2. Then he takes the 180 words he remembers, but he basically loses 10% of those. So 10% of 180 is just going to be 18. Again, move the decimal over one spot, subtract it, and the answer comes out to letter B, 162. Now, an alternate way you could think about this, if you're really familiar with exponential functions, is this is really the same as if you did 200 and then times 0.9 times 0.9, because if he's remembering 10% fewer words, that means that he's really retaining 90% of his starting words. Okay, in other words, it's like going down by 10% means you're technically maintaining 90%. And if you multiply, all these numbers out, you'll get the same 162. So two different ways to think about it, but you should get the same answer regardless of how you solve it. Next up is question number 15. Here you have the equation of a circle, and they're asking for the radius of it. So we're going to start the process to put it into standard form. Now, the way I do that, I'm going to take the two x terms and put them next to each other and then put a blank. Then I'm going to put the two y terms followed by a blank. I'm going to move the 32 over to the right side by subtracting it, and then I will add two blanks on the right. Now, just before I begin, here you only really have to finish the problem on the right side because they are only asking for the radius. But after that, I'm going to show the full work to put the whole equation into standard form, just as practice and review. So we're going to complete the square. That's what the blanks are for. And to do that, we take the b value, which is here is negative 16. We cut it in half. That gives us negative 8. And then we square it. And that gives us 64. Okay, that number goes in the blank. Also goes in the blank on the right. We repeat the process with the y's. We divide by 2. Then we square it. And that gives us positive 4. We put that in both blanks. Now on the right side, we are going to add negative 32 and 64 is positive 32. 32 plus 4 is 36. And standard form for a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. So 36 is equal to r squared. Therefore, r is the square root of that, or r is 6. Correct answer for this one is letter B. Now on the test, this is where you'd move on to the next question because you only have a limited amount of time. But in this video, I'm just going to show you how we would get the final, equation in standard form. So basically, you just need to factor the x's and the y's, and they're each going to factor such that it's going to be x and then the b over 2 term after it. For same for the x's and y's. So for the x's, the b over 2 term is negative 8, so that's what goes inside here. For the y's, the b over 2 term is negative 2. So therefore, we get x minus 8 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 36. This circle has a center of 8, 2 and a radius of 6. All right, now we look at the grid-in or fill-in questions, starting with number 16. You have an absolute value equation. So the traditional way you'd solve this in a math class is you would set up two equations. First one looks like the original problem. Second one, you make the right side negative. However, here they only want the positive solution, so we do not need to worry about solving out the rest of this problem. So x equals 32. That's the answer. That's what you grid in. Move on to the next question. So I will tell you, though, obviously, if this question asked about something like, what is the sum of the solutions to this problem? Or what is the difference of solutions, whatever, then yes, you would have to solve out both equations and get both answers, and do whatever you're asked to do with them. But for this problem, you don't need to spend time doing that. Next up, number 17. Here you have the equation of a line. It's in slope-intercept form, and they wanted the slope of a line that is parallel to it. Well, we already talked about, when you have two lines that are, I think we talked about this, no solution, two lines that are parallel, they have the same slope. So the slope of line K is 7, okay? Parallel lines have the same slope. Therefore, the slope of this other line is also going to be 7. So correct answer, what you grid in is just the number 7. That's it. No more work is needed. Move on to the next question. All right, here we have question number 18. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and solve it, in what would I consider the traditional manner by solving for p, and then I'll talk about an alternate method after that. So first step, I would subtract 4, and I would get 2/3 p equals 6. Then I'd multiply by 3, cancel out, 2p equals 18, divide by 2, Okay, p equals 9. Notice, this is not the answer. This is not what they want. They want 3p. So 3 times 9, or 3p, is 27. Therefore, the correct answer, what you grid in, is the number 27. Now, one other thing just to be aware of, a lot of times on these questions where they ask for like some expression, there usually is like an easy way to get that expression just by like adding by something, or like dividing or multiplying by like one number. This one, it's not that obvious, because if you take the 2/3 p equals 6, so if you do the first step, like if you're trying to turn the left side into 3p, what you have to do is you actually have to multiply by 9/2, and that's not an obvious fraction to most people. If you do that, notice on the left side, the 2's cancel out, 3 goes into 9 3 times, so you get 3p. On the right side, 2 goes into 6 3 times, 3 times 9, okay, 3p is 27. But it's almost just as quicker to solve for p and then just multiply it by 3. All right, number 19 is up next. Here you have some polynomial multiplication, but notice we're only concerned with the x squared terms, okay? So we only need to look at the variables after potential multiplications and write down, do out the ones that give us an x squared. So for example, here, x cubed times x squared, x to the fifth, we don't need to do that. X cubed times x, x to the fourth, don't need to do that. Here we have x times x squared, x cubed, don't need to do it. Next, x times x. Okay, that's going to be x squared, so now we'll multiply, and we should get negative 6x squared, okay, from here to here. Now, looking at the other ones, here we have basically x to the 0 times x squared. So that's going to be x squared, so we have to do this one as well. That's going to be positive 15x squared. And then the last one is just going to be x to the first. That we don't need. So these are the only two like terms we need to combine. So negative 6 plus 15 is 9x squared. Therefore, the correct answer to this problem is just 9. They only want the coefficient, so you just grid in 9 and that's it. All right, the last question deals with some basic trig. So in this problem, when I first looked at this, I immediately knew what the value of this side down here was, because basically, if you think about it, tangent of an angle is equal to, opposite over adjacent. And in this diagram, 15 is the value of the adjacent side. This side I highlighted in blue, that's the opposite. I knew what this value is because it's a common Pythagorean triple, but if you didn't know that off the top of your head, that's fine. Then you could just use Pythagorean theorem to figure it out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do b squared plus 15 squared equals 17 squared. B squared plus 225 equals 289. And then I get b squared equals 64, and then you square root both sides. So b equals 8. Okay, therefore this side in the triangle down here is just equal to 8. 8, 15, 17 is a common Pythagorean triple. So now you can just plug that in. So the tangent of this unknown angle x is just going to equal 8 over 15. So I would grid in 8 divided by 15. I would not worry about the equivalent decimal, but if you want to do out the long division, or if you know what this is equal to for some strange reason, it's just 0.53 repeating. So what you would grid in is 0.533. Okay, so either of those would technically be acceptable correct answers. All right, so that's the last question on this October 2022 SAT QAS Math No Calculator section. Again, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and also sign up for notifications. Be on the lookout for the solutions to the calculator section, which should be posted in a couple of days. And also, if you have any questions or comments about this specific test, feel free to leave them on the video below.